Hi, I'm Chef Gail Sokol and welcome to my kitchen. Today we're making authentic croissants, and usually it's a 2-day process, but we're gonna make them in 1 day. What now? 1-day croissants, and they're not crescent rolls from any old can you might find, either in your refrigerator or the grocery store. These are croissants. Now this is a laminated dough, it's a yeasted dough, and it is related to puff pastry and Danish dough. They're all laminated doughs. It's a category where there's a base dough made first, and then the butter is folded in with certain turns and folds. You like my moves? And what they do is they create hundreds, I'm not exaggerating this time, hundreds of flaky layers. And that's because by the time you do your folds, you have increased the butter dough layers exponentially. And when the butter melts in the middle of each of those layers, it creates a space. In that space is water, steam forms in the oven at a high temperature, and it pushes up on the dough above and below it, separating each layer. So that bite into that croissant is like crunch, 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 crunch. It's amazing, and we're gonna do it in a day. So let's get started on our base dough. So I have right here 3 3/4 cups of all-purpose flour. I have 1 tablespoon of instant active or fast rising yeast, and 2 1/4 teaspoons of table salt. And I'm just gonna whisk that up because we're getting our mise en place ready. Now before I whisked all this up, I actually got some of my liquid ingredients ready. So I have nice warm 1/2 cup of whole milk heated up with a cup plus a tablespoon of water. And I heated it up to about 105 to 110 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you dip your finger in, if you don't have a thermometer, don't worry about it. Dip your finger in it. If you could take a bath in it, it's perfect. We don't want to kill our yeast. So that's ready to go. In my electric mixer, where we're going to be making my base dough, we have 1/4 cup of light brown sugar. And we're gonna put our liquid ingredients, our milk and our water, into the brown sugar just to dissolve it. All right? And we're just gonna whisk it up a little bit. Once we've whisked it up, now we're going to add our paddle attachment. Now, why don't I use my dough hook instead? I think the paddle actually blends things better first. So I'm going to add my dry ingredients. So this is remember my flour, my yeast, and my salt. And we're going to do this on low speed. And then I'm a sort of get your hands in the dough sort of gal. So I'm going to actually pour this out, this dough, onto my work surface and knead it a little bit so that the gluten strands start really developing and taking shape and straightening out. And I'm going to show them what's what so that they will be able to trap the carbon dioxide from the fermentation process as our dough rises. Now we're making it in a day. Normally this is a 2-day process because there's a lot of resting. So we're going to have one rest. We're going to have to because the gluten is going to be developed too much. So I'm just going to get all this in, all this good stuff in. All right, then I can hear a battle going on in there, so I'm going to actually get it out of my mixing bowl and get it onto a work surface. All right, so I can bring it together. Because it's pretty shaggy at this point, you can see. So I have my bowl scraper, and I'm going to get everything out of here, because this is certainly not what I would consider a satisfactory dough right up until now. You can use your hands as well. But I like to really get in there and feel the dough. Otherwise, you really don't know what you're dealing with. And my dough doesn't know what it's dealing with, right? Because I'm a force too. So get everybody out there, all right? And then what I'm going to do is get rid of your bowl scraper and switch to your bench scraper, because that's made of metal. It's a little bit more easily manipulating to the dough. So you can actually lift it up and flip it over. So I can't really knead this right now because it sort of looks like an old sheepdog. It really does. It's sort of scruffy looking. So we're going to get all the ingredients together. And if you ever feel your dough is too dry, you can always add a few drops of water, or if you ever feel that it's too wet, you can always add a little more flour. You have to remember, flour can actually absorb moisture in the air. If it's in your kitchen and your kitchen tends to be moist, or you live in a actually wet environment, can actually make a difference. So all you have to do, you don't have to really change your recipe, you just sort of adjust. That's why you feel your dough. Get your hands in it. Get your hands in it. Never trust a baker that doesn't touch her dough. All right, so I'm just gonna get all my little pieces up, and I'm actually gonna knead it until it starts coming together and forming a slightly sticky, smooth and elastic mass. And I have a piece of plastic wrap right here because I need to put this into the refrigerator just to keep it cool enough until I get my butter ready. That's our fat. Not everybody makes croissants with butter. Sometimes they use different types of shortenings or different types of fats. And that's because there are shortenings that actually have a higher melting point than butter. But butter tastes the best. Let's face it, folks. Now you see how I'm slightly sticky? But it's good. It's all good. Because I can start adding flour later on. I'm not going to add any more flour right now. I want to get this into a squarish, rectangular-ish shape. That's the shape of the day. So I'm going to get this onto a piece of plastic wrap, and watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to flip the plastic wrap over. I'm going to flip it over again. I'm going to take a quick break just to wash my hands and get that dough up. I'm going to show you how I shape it and get it into the shape of the day until we get our butter ready, because this really is the foundation of how we get our flaky layers. This is where it all starts, folks. All right? All right. So I've got this wrapped up. Now I'm going to sort of push down on each end, and then I'm going to push, 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 and sort of shape it. And it's a square. See that? It's a square. It's a square. I'm going to put this in my fridge. Now I'm going to work on my fat, my butter. So what I'm going to do now is I have 1.5 cups of unsalted butter, high quality butter. That's about 82% butter fat. If you would like to use one of those fancy schmancy butters, you can. From Ireland, and there's all different, from France, all different types of butters you can use. This is just an American-made butter, and I find it works beautifully. I took 3 sticks, and if you notice, I lined them up lengthwise next to each other, like they're friends, okay? And I have them on a piece of plastic wrap. I have another piece of plastic wrap that I'm gonna put on top. And this is a great way for the home chef to get their butter ready for this laminated dough, this rolled in dough that it's called, this croissant dough. And then you're gonna beat it a little bit, all right? What the heck? We wanna get a rectangle of 8 inches by 5 inches. If it's a little bit more or a little bit less, it's okay. But we're trying to cause some friction. Involved. They love making noise. I had a whole class doing this of kids between 10 and 16 banging on their butter for their croissants. I'm not kidding. All thing. Now, we said 8 by 5. It can be, this is about 7 by 6. So we got a little ways to go. Now, once you start beating it, it's actually going to soften. So you're going to be able to roll it. But you do want it in between this nice plastic wrap sandwich, with the butter being the center, okay? So keep that in there, all right? Like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect, but you do want sort of a uniform thickness across it, okay? And then we're gonna put this back in the fridge while we get our dough ready to actually receive our butter. Because we would like to keep, this is the whole key to these laminated doughs. And don't let anybody fool you, this is the key. You want the same consistency of your fat to your butter. That is the key to a beautiful croissant or Danish or whatever laminated dough you are making. All right, so we have 8. I have a little bit more than 8 by 5, and that's okay. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm just gonna call it perfect. Roll it up, put it on a sheet pan, put it in the fridge for a little while, and I'm gonna get my dough. Trying to keep everything at the same consistency. And it can get a little frantic. It's, you know, it can be a little frantic doing something like this, but once you get used to it, it's beautiful. It's great. I'm only going to use a little bit of flour because I want some of the dough to stick to the corners so I can actually get a nice, sharp rectangle. Now, right now, we're looking for a 10 by 16 inch rectangle. Remember, the shape of the day is rectangle. We don't want any triangles. We don't want any weird shapes. We want a rectangle. Now this was a little sticky going in, not a problem. I'm just gonna put it down, all right. Flour a little bit on top. Now you should have a pastry brush with you at all times so you can actually get the excess flour off. And the reason is you don't want flour to be in between your butter and your dough. That would be a horrible thing, folks, because that will interfere with your beautiful flakiness, all right? And it will also make your croissants dry. Nobody wants a dry croissant. All right, so you can see how I'm getting more elliptical. So I'm gonna put a little bit more flour underneath. We're looking for a 16 by 10. Now this first time that we envelope the butter or the fat into this dough can be a little rough around the edges in the beginning. So don't worry about it. That is just the name of the game. All right, so let's just check what we got just so you have an idea. This is about 13 by 8. So we have 16 by 10 to go. So I'm gonna go lengthwise this way. And again, you're gonna roll a little to the right, a little to the left so you square it off and then push back a little. You really want to maintain this rectangular shape. If it's not perfect now, you're not going to worry about it. Now I'm going to rotate. I'm going to lift up this baby boy, and he will shrink a little bit, and that's normal. Are you a he or she? I don't know. All right. But you're lovely. You are lovely. I love yeast dough. Can you tell? I love it. It feels so good. It's sort of like relaxing to do this, you know? So you're trying to get this into a 16 by 10. How are we doing? Let's go 16 by 10 because it's going to receive. Ooh, it's longer than 16, perfect. And a little bit longer than 10. So I'm going to push back a little bit. Okay, we're ready for our butter. We're ready for our enveloping our butter into our dough. It's the whole basis of a laminated dough. And then you do a series of folds and turns to build up those layers. So if you notice, I'm never letting the butter get too hard, nor am I letting the dough get too firm in the fridge. So you're going to get your beautiful little sort of cookie type thing We're gonna pull up one piece of plastic wrap. All right, here we go. Pull, pull, pull. Okay. Get that off of there. And then we're gonna take our 8x5 and we're gonna flip it over into the middle of our dough. You see that? And pull that plastic wrap off. Just peel it off. Peel it off, okay? Now we're gonna pretend we're gonna send a letter. And we're gonna fold this as if we would actually be folding a letter, like boom, boom, in thirds. Okay, so we're gonna lift it up and we're gonna make sure, don't worry if the butter doesn't come to the edges now. It's not supposed to. Don't worry about it because when I'm done with it, it's gonna be. And it's gonna have these gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous flaky layers. So you're gonna make sure that your corners, see the corners are not meeting perfectly because they're not sticking. Take a little water and make sure they stick. Take a little water, that's my trick, and make them stick. So again, we're gonna roll it out to a 10 by 16 inch rectangle. The butter is now enclosed and now we start doing a fold. This is our second fold. There's a total of 3 folds for croissant dough. All right, so you're gonna roll out lengthwise. And you see this is where the butter could ooze out if it was to melt out. So we're going to fold those sides in this time. Huh? There's a method to my madness. So they actually get trapped in there, the butter. And we don't want to lose that butter because that's where we actually build up our layers. All right? So I know I can feel I'm at 16. Yep, I can feel I'm at 16. Now I just have to get to 10. So rotate your baby. All right, but again, make sure, look, roll one end. So I'm rolling on the right side, the middle, and then the other side, and it will strengthen, it will actually straighten right out. You may feel the butter moving around in there. This is a good thing. Just don't poke it. Don't poke a hole through your dough. You don't want the butter to come out. So you want to keep on going. All right, you want to elongate and make this rectangle. If you ever see any butter peek out, put a little flour on it. You should always have a little flour ready to go. All right, so we're just going to check. We still have 16 and we have 10, but it's still not a perfect rectangle. So let me just make a more perfect rectangle. Every time you do a fold, remember you're going to make a total of 3, you will get a more and more perfect rectangle. And that butter, you'll see little bits of it around. You'll actually see it inside the dough. You'll see right through the dough. Now, what do we want to do? We want to send another letter. So we're going to do another letter fold in thirds. All right, and you can actually see these layers beginning to form. If you have any excess flour, brush it off. We don't want flour on here right now. Now you see this? I see some butter peeking out, so I'm just going to put a little bit of flour on there. Now, for my third fold, which is what I want to do now, and every time we do this, it goes up exponentially, butter dough, right? We want to make sure that you see where that butter's exposed. We want to make sure this time this is folded in when we do our letter fold. All right, so we're going to start rolling out again. Notice I'm not using that much flour anymore. And the dough is looking much less shaggier than it was. Now, after this third fold, you can leave it overnight if you wanted to, but I want croissants today. I don't know about you. And I'm just going to give it a rest because it's beginning to get a little rubber bandy, sort of boing, it's boinging. That's the gluten working. So what we want to do, and that's to be expected, that happens. It happens. And what we want to do is make sure that the gluten, I see a little butter, so I'm putting a little flour on there. We want to make sure the gluten relaxes because that'll make shaping our glorious croissant so much easier. So I'm just going to get my last 16 by 10 inch rectangle. I'm going to do my last, I hear butter coming out underneath. So if you do, and it does happen, just roll it under. All right, put a little flour under. All right. It does happen, don't worry about it. It happens to the best chefs. Butter does come out. Best chefs know that. They can admit it. They should admit it. All right, so we're gonna keep going. Keep going, because you can actually see the butter just under the surface. All right. All right, so we're almost at 16, but I do see a lot of the butter's like, we're coming out. And we don't want you out, so we're gonna get rid of that little bit of butter. All right. And if you have to, you can actually flip it over. All right, and put a little bit more flour underneath there. It happens. It opens up sometimes. And then this is where we're going to actually want to incorporate our fold this way so we can keep that butter in. All right. All right. So once we get to 16 by 10, we're going to do another fold, another letter fold. All right. 16 by 10, we're going to fold in. Going to get a little excess flour off of there. Okay, get it in. If you see a little butter there, don't worry about it, because this dough is going to come over it, right over it, okay? Don't worry about it. There is a tiny little bit of butter there. I'm just going to cover it. At this point, I'm going to wrap this back in my plastic wrap, and I'm going to put it in the refrigerator for about an hour, even up to a couple hours, or overnight at this point. And I'll see you back here for shaping. So my dough has rested for about an hour, so the gluten has relaxed. It'll make shaping easier. I've cut it in half crosswise, and you can see all the different layers actually. And this doesn't do it justice. When it bakes off, you'll really see it. Now I'm going to roll it out to a 16 by 12 inch rectangle. So I've rolled out the dough to a 16 by 12 inch rectangle, flouring it as I went. Now the 16th long side is facing me, okay? So it's 12 by 16. And I have a ruler here, and what I want to do now is I'm going to make it an actual 15 inch long, because I'm going to take off this scruffy edge, because that might be where some of the layers are not perfect. So I'm going to take about a ½ inch on both sides. All right, I'm going to take a ½ inch off. So we're going to end up with about a 15 by 12 inch. All right. So you can line it up. Just take that. Okay, and remove that. All right, you're going to do it on the other side, about a ½ inch. So I want to get this to a 12, to an actual 15. So here I am. It was 16. I want it to be about 15 now, and it is. All right. I'm going to take this scruffy area off here. Just take it off. Now don't screw that up. Don't like mess it up, right? You can bake that off. It's yummy. All right. Now at this point, I'm going to make a 1½ inch notch with a pizza wheel. So you want to have a pizza wheel 1½ inches in. All right, I'm just going to make a little notch there. All right, and then after that, I'm going to do about 3 inches, as many 3-inch sections as I can go. Just a little notch. So you just want 3 inches, okay? So 3, and this will make good size croissant, but if you'd like them bigger, you can also make 3½ inch, you can make 4 inch, and you should have, so we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 going across, and you'll see what ends up happening. So you see this 1½ inch notch here? You're going to take your ruler and go down just to the edge of the side closest to you, and you're just gonna make a slanted edge. You see that? We're gonna just make a slanted edge. That's not a croissant. That's just something that we wanna do. Now we're actually gonna make isosceles triangles. Remember geometry? Remember the 2 long sides? So that's what we're gonna do. So I wanna make 3 inch notches now on the side closest to you. All right, so I'm just going to make as many as I can, and whatever you can get out of it, you get out of it. All right. If it's not perfect, mine are not going to be perfect either, so don't worry about it. It is what it is. All right? And sometimes the dough shrinks, and you will have a little shrinkage. All right. So from this side, where that first 3-inch notch is, I'm going to go to the edge. All right, and I'm going to make my first isosceles triangle. All right, then I'm going to go over here to the opposite side, and I'm going to make another isosceles triangle. And then I'm going to keep doing that. All right, remember this is only half your dough, so you're going to work the other half and make more croissants. People are going to be coming to you. You will be the source for croissants. You will be. All right, you're going to go the opposite way. And make sure you watch the cutting so that you do have isosceles triangles. The longer they are, the more layers you're going to have. That's what we're talking about, folks. Many layers, the hundreds of layers, that's what I'm talking about. All right, so we're going to keep on going. And I'm just going to have a small one over here, so that's okay. Because just the way mine shrank a little bit. And I can actually make it an isosceles, so I'm going to do that. You didn't know I was the geometry queen, huh? All right, so I have an egg wash. 1 egg, 2 teaspoons of whole milk, just whisked. All right? Little pastry brush. You don't want a big fat one here, so you want a narrow one. And what you're going to do is take your first, I'm going to use, sometimes they just stuck a little bit, my first isosceles triangle, and you're going to roll it, okay? You're going to roll it. Almost like you're rolling up a towel. Roll, roll, roll. I have a little butter underneath it, but I'm going to keep on rolling. Really tight, really, really tight. As you get to the end, I want you to gently pull. Gently pull. Pull, 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 pull. Flip that little narrow edge over and put that down. Okay, and just give it a little push down. And you're going to put it on a piece of parchment lined sheet pan. And you're going to continue with these. And you're going to continue making them until you get all of these done. And then you're going to work on your other half. And these will have to be proofed for about 1 to 2 hours. So in a warm place, and I don't mean really super heated, it's got to be about 90 degrees. You can put it in an unlit oven or just a warm closet if you have it. Put them at least 2 inches apart because they're going to puff up. Remember, seam side down. And if they've stuck a little bit, and sometimes they do, just give it a little help up. All right. So you want these to proof for about an hour or 2. They're going to get puffy, but we're going to egg wash them before we proof them. Remember, it's a yeast dough. And at this point, you could actually, if you did not proof them, you could freeze them on this sheet pan. Oh yeah, just like this. Freeze them for a couple of months and then thaw them and then just allow this to rise like time stood still if you wanted to. All right. So if you notice, there's no crescent shape. It's just a straight all butter, just the way they do it in France. Baby, this is authentic croissant. And I'm just going to keep on going as tight as I can. Tight, tight, tight. Tight, tight. Pull that little baby up. Keep on going. I'm going to fill this sheet pan. If you don't have a warm oven, you can actually take a pan like this and fill it with a little hot water. The problem with putting them in too hot an area is they're going to look like the butter is leaking out. And sometimes you'll see a pool of butter if you put them into too hot a proofing area. So make sure it's on the cooler side and not on the warmer side, because if you lose your butter, you lost your layers, baby, and your flakes, and we don't want to lose that. So I'm gonna continue rolling these. I'm gonna put them in my unlit oven, and then I'm going to let them rise for 1 to 2 hours, but I'm gonna egg wash them before I do this. We're gonna do another egg wash and bake them, and I'll see you back here in a couple hours. So my beautiful croissants have proofed. So I put them in a warm place. In my case, I put them in my oven, my unlit oven, for about an hour. They got nice and puffy. Remember, we egg washed them before we put them into proof, and now I egg wash them again, and I leave them out of the oven while I preheat it to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. That is a hot oven. That is going to create a lot of steaminess inside these layers and cause the poof that we want with those beautiful, crispy, flaky layers. Once I put them in the oven, I immediately turn down the oven to 375 and leave them in for 22 to 26 minutes till they're nice and golden brown. Midway through, just take a peek through the window, and if you want to rotate, you can, but try to leave your oven closed. I'm putting them in. Look at these gorgeous croissants. They just came out of the oven, and they are spectacular. Look at the flaky layers. Look at the brown. You hear that? You hear that? I'm gonna break one open. Oh my God, they're so hot. Oh my goodness. I need to eat one now, so I hope you make this recipe. I hope you become a subscriber, and I'll see you next time.